taker, but now he's stable.
Yeah, I know. We have to update the theme song because now I'm the one that's pretty stable, and Sam's. Well, actually, no. Now it's back to the Sam's phoning in from a hotel, kind of situation. I am more stable. Well, how was your trip, Sam? As we, do a soft opening here.
It was amazing. I mean, so for the audience, I was planning for a trip to Las Vegas to go see Dead & Company at the Sphere.
Oh, nice.
Which was awesome.
I forgot you were doing that. That's amazing.
Yes, it was.
I saw some pictures from another person who went, and yeah, it looked pretty incredible.
Absolutely insane. Like at one point even though I knew I wasn't moving, I was like, I feel like I'm actually moving. Like, am I not moving? Is the whole structure moving? It was crazy. It's just like, it makes your senses just go, I don't know, overdrive, but
that's very cool.
It was incredible. And John Mayer's he's an incredible guitarist. My goodness. I was like, whoa. A lot of people, the purists, don't love that Mayer's with the Dead, but I was cool with it.
Yeah. Nice. That sounds like that's one of these things you have to do. I would this is pretty early in the show for me to mention Burning Man, but Burning Man's one of those, like, you have to just do it once kind of experiences. In the Sphere, as like commercial and whatever as it is, it seems the same way. Like all the hype is backed up. Like your experience, Drew Carey's experience, those are the two experiences that I've heard about, and they're both like right up here. So that's great.
Well, the funny thing is about Grateful Dead is, they've, as many people might know, they have quite a following, and that they go from city to city, tour to tour, and same thing here. Right, even like through like the Las Vegas casinos, you see the Deadheads looking up, going for the one miracle ticket. They're walking around asking for the ticket. It was so great though. It took me back to the 90s when I first went to see them. I was like, this is so cool. It's like the same.
It's another world. We went to our first Red Rock show in Colorado. We hadn't been to a show there yet. I've seen it and hiked around there a few times, but that's obviously another world famous venue. And being that we're in Colorado, there are a lot of just kind of resident Deadheads, that kind of show up for those shows, and they have their like box truck and it's open and you're walking by, and they're really like shrewd business people, like the way they set up with their like trucks and stuff, and they're very legitimate. They're they're like current or former hippies or whatever, and they're just kind of like selling bottles of water and things like that. And a lot of times you hear, if they judge you to be someone who's like not a cop, you hear them offer like various substances. So they'll be like cocaine, Molly, and like at the show we were at, it was like threatening to rain and had rained previously. So as we're walking to the show, they're like, cocaine, Molly, parkas. It's like you don't have to be subtle about parkas. Like I'm pretty sure you can sell parkas. Like that's fine. It was, it's great. They're still going strong. They're out there.
Yeah. Man.
So no comment on the content so far, but is this a Patreon show or are we doing a regular broadcast with this soft opening?
Hey, I can go either way, guys. The Dead is good for either show.
Yeah. Same. I think make this the regular show then, I guess, unless you guys,
then we need an intro.
Okay. Jerry, you want to handle that? Okay, I'll do.
No.
I guess I got it. All right. Welcome to another episode of Command Control Power. We are recording now in the middle of July. And so by the time you hear this, we may be a bit, maybe it's going to be August, maybe it's going to be 2025. I don't know how you roll, but we're here now, and we're happy that you're listening whenever you're listening.
Yeah, and if you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, Joe, it looks like you're letting your face grow long a little bit there.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's more just like I didn't bother to shave for a little while, and now I'm just going to see what happens. So, but Roy in the chat says, should we make this a Patreon show based on the content there in terms of like the Deadheads and what they're selling? But yeah, it's a very good point, Roy.
I'll just bleep you out, Joe.
Yeah. You can't even say anything like that. I'm not saying to do it. I'm not offering to sell it, but you can't even mention substances, I guess. Parkas, who knew? Okay. Raincoat. Sorry. All right. So rolling right into tech here if we're ready.
Yeah, before we get started, this just came in. Joe, I'm stepping all over you here, but this is a hot off the presses kind of thing. This will date the show, but this email just came in, effective August 15th. The price of our, this is BackBlaze, their USB hard drive restores and USB snapshots will be changing to $279. Now, they don't say if you get a refund if you send it back or anything like that, but that's a quantum leap from $99, right?
I thought it was the last one I ordered. I thought it was like $179. Does that sound reasonable to order the drive? I could be misremembering that. I hope I didn't cause this, because in a recent show I talked about how the drive that they sent us was just bad. Like it connected, it mounted, it unlocked. It comes encrypted obviously, and you unlock it. And by the time it just degraded quickly, and we had to return it and order a new one. So I hope I didn't cause this by mentioning the fact that these drives fail when they get reused. But
that's how much of a following we have, Joe.
I know. We're swaying
the
pricing. But yeah, if you get a discount, it's all good, or a refund, it's all fine, right? It doesn't really matter as long as it's semi-reasonable for somebody to float the charge. But interesting. Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, that's crazy. Actually, I didn't get that email, by the way, Jerry. I don't know.
I didn't either.
Why you're on the up and up here?
Just landed. Maybe I'm in the first wave of mailings, but it came in at 6:03 and it's 6:09. So there you go.
Wow. So I wanted to ask you, Jerry, about Sequoia. I know you've, as we record today, the public beta just dropped, and obviously Jerry installed it because that's what he does. And so, Jerry, you said it was uneventful. How can you remark on it at all?
Yeah, it was just like installing iOS 15 on my iPhone, which I did. I didn't wait for the beta for the public beta for that. I just went ahead and upgraded it, and it's really hard to tell. I do see the tiling that's available through the whole OS, where you can arrange screens a little bit more conveniently. And being able to manipulate your iPhone works remarkably well. It looks like it'll probably be handy, especially if you're running apps that you can't get on your Mac. I tried to send a call, like I tried to make a call on the iPhone and send it out and see if the fact that I'm doing the Wi-Fi calling on my Sequoia Mac now, if it would pick it up and I could use it as a dialer, like a dialing screen, but that didn't seem to work. So it kind of stays in its own little sandbox. But other than that, I mean, you can completely interact with the iPhone. It's really astounding.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
I might just install it just for that interaction feature. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But no major bugs or hiccups for
not on either the iOS or the macOS. It's just you have to really look hard to see that it's there.
I guess we should be happy about that. It's like the Snow Leopard kind of style release where it's like bug fixes under the hood and optimizations. But I mean, everybody keeps referring to that that OS. I don't know if it's just me remembering it that way, but everybody seemed to talk about that as like an all-time greatest like OS. And at the time it was like that's when they said no new features, right? Because it was like Leopard and then Snow Leopard, and they're like no new features, and that was the feature. I think about that so often still, as I just notice little things. I'm in Safari all day, obviously, and like the little tab previews, usually they're helpful. They have the little icon of the site and whatever. I just noticed some of the sites, I don't know if this is something to do with it, like this one of the sites that I use having this issue or whatever, but like those little icons stopped showing up. I mean, it's a silly example. Who cares really? But it's just like seems like every day there's some new thing that just randomly works or doesn't work. I almost messaged you guys that the 1Password extension was working really well, and it was just so great to have it working. So I know, Sam, you have the same issues I do, right, with that thing?
God, yeah, unbelievable.
And Jerry does it. So and I don't know why. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try to fix this. So I go in And I actually clicked learn more, on one of the things that was like, we had a problem, learn more. And I was like, all right, I can play along. So I go in and sure enough, they say, make sure you turn on integration with the local app. So there's a setting to do that. Obviously that has always been on for me, but I thought, well, let me toggle it off and turn it back on. And I did that. And like for an hour, it was great. It was like working anywhere I needed it. It was fantastic. And I almost texted you guys, and then it stopped working again. So it's just it's just always inconsistent. Like, and that's 1Password, that's third party. But Apple has this stuff even with Safari. So I'm happy if you say really it looks the same, because I have to imagine they have changed some things under the hood, and the features that we know about are great, like the addition of the iPhone mirroring option and other things like that. Like the tiling one looks pretty cool as well. I'm looking forward to that too.
From my understanding and all the videos that I've watched of people who, dive deep into this and do these videos of all the new features that they've rolled out, they've only delivered a handful of things that they promised at WWDC. And over time, the other features will come out.
Right.
And maybe that's a new paradigm for them of how they do their OSs, rather than just like flip all the buttons to on and just like throw it out there and see what happens. They kind of like only turn some of the buttons on and then squash those. Yeah, that seems to make a lot more sense.
It does, actually. I mean, it also keeps the interest going through that operating system throughout the year, not just waiting for a problem to be fixed. It's like, oh, I can't wait for this. And people are excited throughout the year.
Yeah.
There seems to be no change in mail that I could see, unfortunately.
Really?
That seems to be the same. Yeah. So, but if you're listening to this, you're going to hear this a couple weeks later, since the public beta was released. But, if I'd go ahead, what's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, if you're using lots of stuff, like I know, Joe, with your audio setup, you're using Audio Hijack, and I don't know whether it works or it doesn't work. One of the things that I looked at, because I was actually going to send you guys a quick little video of me using my iPhone, and I fired up ScreenFlow, and there's some issue with ScreenFlow recording the screen. And I know you can do it, in QuickTime, but I just didn't bother. So there might be little gotchas, but the things, Joe, that you and I use, like Ring Central, there's no difference to that at all. And
nice. It's funny you mentioned the iPhone, being able to see the iPhone, through QuickTime. When was the last time you guys used that? Because I tried to use that relatively recently, and it just wasn't an option. You know how you can go in and select the camera, select your iPhone. Try to do it for client support, because I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. It was one of those situations where they were describing the screen, and I was like, I don't know why that's not there or whatever. And, so I really needed it, and it just, wouldn't work in QuickTime.
It wasn't like a case of like the user not trusting on the iPhone or anything, like putting in the passcode or.
That's a good question. I forget. I thought we got far enough where it looked like it had connected, but it just wasn't there for like the, it's supposed to show up as a camera, but yeah. I don't know.
By the way,
should be great. Yeah.
Both you guys have a Splashtop account. Why do you never use Splashtop SOS on your iPhones for clients?
I have. You want to go? Yeah. Did you use it?
But I would say that sometimes it's more problematic for like a home user to like, okay, go download this app and do this when I can just have them connect it usually. And then it's hopefully if it's trusted, it's just like, all right, now we're off to the races. Like how bad it is with Splashtop on the Mac when they have to approve the privacy settings, stuff that can take a good half an hour.
Right, but that doesn't happen on the iPhone. They just have to hit start broadcasting. The most difficult point, and you'll probably remember this, Sam, is they have two Splashtop presentation screens. Once you can see their screen, you have to tell them to flip up from the bottom. It brings you to another Splashtop screen, and then flip up again, and then it brings you to the home screen. And I can't tell you how many times, because I was working with my dad on this too, because he got a new iPhone, and his old phone didn't turn on. So we had to onboard his new iPhone from an iCloud backup. And that, there's a lot of settings that you need to go back into if you do that and retweak them. But I mean, we did it over and over again a couple of times. And I can't tell you how many times I was saying like, flip up from the bottom. And then he'll say, okay. And I'm like, I can see your screen. We can't see your home screen yet, can we?
Right.
No. Okay, flip up from the bottom. Well, I did. Well, we can't see your home screen yet, so let's do it again. what the hell, you know?
Yeah.
And this goes
yeah.
on and on and on. So that's the most difficult thing, I think, for people to do, that interaction of, you know, flipping up from the bottom of your phone. I don't know if people don't do that, and then to get them
I
to
know.
force.
I wonder too. I'm like, how do you use your phone when they don't know
Right.
these basic things that I'm describing? Yeah. They're like, what button? I'm like the main button, like the main. I don't know how to describe it. It's like it's the side button. They're like, which side? I'm like, I don't know. It is a funny name. Like, what does Apple call that anymore? The side button, you know? I guess.
Yeah.
Right. So the sleep wake button they used to call it.
Right. I mean, yeah. But now, like, yeah. Anyway, it's always a little confusing. And I'm like, do you have a home button on your phone? They're like, no. And then I'm like, I don't know why you're not seeing. And then I'm like, do you have Touch ID? And they're like, yeah, it's on the button. I'm like, that's the home. Yeah. Okay. So just press that button, you know. It's like you don't know what they're seeing. It gets confusing. I guess to answer your question, Jerry, it's like, it's the same answer as Sam's. You know, if I have to stop what I'm doing and have them go to the App Store and download the app and then open the app and just, you know, there's too many things that can go wrong. And sometimes we're already on the screen where I'm like, I think I can describe what to do next, you know, because again, Splashtop doesn't get you past this, like swipe up and hold, and then quit the, you know, force quit the app or press these two buttons down. It doesn't let you do any of that stuff. So with iPhone mirroring, you know, I think that's the real advantage there, is you can actually control the phone. And so we'll be able just to say, you know, I'll say, just lock your phone. Okay, I'm going to bring up iPhone mirroring in your dock here. You can see everything I'm doing on your phone. And, you know, I can click, I can swipe, I can type. It's good. Yeah. That's going to be great. You know, if it's almost a reason to tell your residential clients to upgrade to both Sequoia and iOS 18 at that point. Right.
Yeah, you're right. iOS 18, is that right? Because I was saying 15 before.
Yeah,
I've got
yours the 15.
I know, I've got the phone models confused with the,
Yeah. No, they should sync those up at some point. Just be like, you know, iOS, macOS, it's all one it's version 20 now. We're just going to 20.
Just start new.
Yeah. So this time of year, you know, so there's the earlier, there's the developer beta. Now there's the public beta. Now I think there's a pretty big distinction. Like, I think once the public beta is out, it's stable enough for the public, as the name implies, you know, almost stable. Obviously it's not ready yet for Apple to support, but it's stable enough where it's not going to destroy a bunch of data. And I think a lot of the like features that are enabled are kind of like fully, you know, realized in a certain sense. Like I always hear, I don't know if you guys listen to the Accidental Tech podcast, but they talk about the beta when it comes out, you know, right after WWDC, they started, you know, installing it and talking about it and complaining about, like, you know, I don't know why Apple designed it this way. Like, it should work this other way. And it's like, guys, it's in beta, you know, that it's like, maybe it's not implemented yet. Like, you want it to work that way. It's obvious that it should. And maybe Apple just hasn't fixed it, or it's a bug or whatever. That's the point of a beta. Like, we don't know yet that this is the way it's designed to work. I think we're at the point now with the public beta, as distinct from the developer beta, where like it works the way it's going to work for the most part. They don't usually roll things back, you know, in terms of design. Maybe the one exception was like Safari tabs, when they, like, you know, flipped the tabs to be at the top of the window bars, like did something weird and people complained and like they rolled it back. But that rarely happens. So yeah, I'm curious to hear, like, how do you advise your clients? I think I know the answer, but do either of you guys have clients that like to be on the cutting edge?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I have a particular user that he's no longer runs the company, but he was the owner of a company or a partner in the company, and we handled them. And then they kind of closed off because all the partners got older and they were just like, I don't need this anymore. So we're just going to retire. Yeah. And so one of them, they're well off, and he always wants the latest, not only the latest hardware, but the latest software. And he's always on the cutting edge. But he's a cool, like, it's funny. There are people that do that and then they complain, you know, like, why isn't this working? Well, you're in the public beta. I mean, what do you want there? Or you're in 0.0 release, but he's the type of guy that's like super positive. So I'm cool with him upgrading.
Yeah.
He's actually, I talked about him years ago on the show. He just messaged me the other day. We hadn't been in touch for a while, and he asked for some help on some Wi-Fi stuff. And at the end, he goes, I just wanted to send you an email to tell you everything's great. He's like the one guy that does that.
I know. That's so
like,
great.
You're awesome.
That's
I love you.
To hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I wouldn't mind a client like that if they're not going to complain. Jerry, I mean, do you, despite the fact that you're running a lot of the betas, I'm assuming you don't encourage your clients to install betas, or even maybe like what about the 0.0 release that Sam brought up? Do you let clients?
No,
Go
absolutely not. I kind of toe the line that you do, Joe. Maybe not quite to the extreme that you do, but in terms of being an OS behind for a lot of your clients. But I have lots of people on Ventura. I don't have anyone like Sam's client who's wanting to be on the cutting edge, so that's good for me.
Nice.
I if somebody wanted to, I mean, like, who am I? I'm not the OS police, so sure, go ahead.
Nice.
Might represent more billable dollars for me, but
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's the nice thing about making that kind of, disclaimer is like, hey, we don't support it. You're probably going to have issues. We may not be able to help, but then if you can help, they're thrilled to pay you at that point. So yeah, what's the harm, I guess, if you've got the bandwidth for it.
Right.
I was even thinking about, so, as you mentioned, I'm kind of a little behind usually with I don't recommend cutting edge for my clients. Usually, like the saying goes, the 0.3 release, I don't know if that's just now apocryphal at this point, but usually the 0.3 of something ends up getting like that's where they roll in like, any of the bugs that slip through like the beta process, whatever, they've got that all fixed by then. And by then vendors have had a chance to catch up. So I'm happy to support the 0.3. And so we're still getting through our Sonoma upgrades for a lot of residential clients. We've unblocked it for a while now, but, we're like encouraging people. We're saying we can handle it for you, or, you can just go ahead and upgrade. Or would you like us to prompt you? So we have a policy now in Adigy where, they'll just get prompted to install, Sonoma. So if they want to like opt in just to save them a couple steps going in through system settings, they can get the prompt from us. But if we handle it, I've found that, for like, if it's at least a few Macs in a company or a residence, it ends up being about, I'd say like 15 to 30 minutes per. So it's like, 45 minutes for 2 Macs, that kind of thing. So if we can do them in batches, we can bill for the time. So, I know everybody's agreements are different, but like for a residential client, I'm assuming nobody includes that kind of thing with their plan. Maybe for a business, you might include OS upgrades. How do you charge for that stuff, or do you include any of that? Sam, to you specifically, because you probably have more companies that you deal with like that.
Yeah, I think what we usually say is like, as long as we can handle it by MDM, it won't be a cost. But if we don't really have these anymore, but any customers that don't use MDM and we have to manually touch them and upgrade them, then we're going to bill you for it.
Okay.
And that's kind of old wording at this point, because I think everyone's on MDM now. But
yeah,
I like your 0.3 attitude there in a way, just kind of giving it a little bit of leeway before let all the people complain online and do all that other stuff and then start to roll it out.
Yeah, exactly.
But do you guys find that like it can take, I don't know, maybe like that it can take a long period of time to get everyone there? Like either people aren't available or they don't click the button or the automatic update fail. And this takes like months for like, you got 5 people and then the other 5 people, it takes them another 3 months to upgrade.
Kind of. Yeah. I think with, MDM updates, I will say, have been fantastic, updates, not upgrades. But you can sort of do the same. You can do upgrades with MDM. So I'm kind of wondering, like, do I start to enforce, like more automated MDM updates? Are you finding that there's a difference there, Sam, between like the automatic MDM updates that would just happen kind of at night if the machine is, available to update? Those I found pretty reliable. Like most of my fleet, Macs I manage for both residences and companies, like just basically stay up to date now. I just use Adigy's built-in system updates, through MDM. You can use that for upgrades. Do you do that, or what's your method? And do you see a difference there?
I've been using a tool called Erase Install from Graham Pugh on GitHub. Mm-hmm. And because it has a whole great process, like you can either pre-package the operating system or you can let it download, but it has this whole like using Swift dialogue, like integration with the user, and says, your computer doesn't have enough power, please plug it in before you proceed, and does all this like sanity checking for storage and everything.
Yeah.
And it's really fantastic. It's just a little bit, I got to get it put together, but that's what I use, because I find like without holding everybody's hand, it can be really difficult to get each person through it. And if they have at least the prompts for power and storage and the other stuff, they won't call me and with problems. So that's what I use for upgrades.
For me, it's a question of scale, because, I'm a little bit more small potatoes. If I had clients that, like, your largest clients are probably twice the size or 3 times the size of my largest clients, I would say, just for the listeners without getting into specifics. But at that scale, I think I would be looking at a tool. But at my scale, I'd use a combination of like those built-in functions, where MDM upgrades generally just work. Or for a lot of our companies and residences, we offer to do it ourselves. And of course, we can get some billable time for that. But, it's a little bit of a manual process. And so, of course, I'm wondering sometimes, like, is this just a waste of my time? Is this a waste of their money? Like, should I invest the time in setting up a more automated way to do that, like you're describing? But I also like the fact that it gives us an excuse to see the machine. Because these days, like, you're really not seeing a lot of computers a lot of the time. Like, they're, the computer's showing up to you as like an entry on a spreadsheet, or, on a report, or in a list, or like it's a status, with a check mark or something. But what's really going on there? Like, when I reboot it, like, do I see 15 pop-ups of things they're just ignoring? Like, I'm not going to see that on my dashboard or whatever.
Right.
And so I think, like, it that's kind of my excuse. Maybe it's just a justification for continuing to do it the manual way of, like, I'm doing live desktop to get to the computer in some cases to, like, click install, if the more automated tools aren't doing it for me. But again, seeing it is nice. So I don't know.
Actually, you have a super valid point, in my opinion. Anyway, I was just working with a client today, and she couldn't get Box to show up in her menu bar. She's like, it just disappeared. And so when I went in with her, she had a whole bunch of like login items basically that were starting up with the Mac and showing up in the menu bar. And at some point, it doesn't show any more items.
Oh yeah.
So she's like, what is all this stuff here? Why is it here? She's like, half joking. She wasn't like complaining to me, but just like complaining about it in general. And that FaceTime or visible time, we took the time to just basically disable all these login items they were harmless, but just annoying.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have seen that if we didn't do that time together.
Yeah. And maybe they're not harmless. I mean, they're all potential vectors for attack too. Like the more things you run, the bigger the surface area is for like some, small little utility to get exploited or whatever. So it's a good security practice too, just to streamline the system as much as possible. I don't know. What about you, Jerry? How do you handle this whole thing of upgrading?
I think after listening to both of you guys that I kind of take what's might be considered the lazy tech approach. Okay. So assuming that they're not on Monterey and they're on Ventura and maybe in some cases Sonoma, and this may sound horrible to say, but like, what do we really care whether they're on Ventura or Sonoma if all they're doing is Office 365, they're getting their email, they're not rattling your cage for anything. They may not be on the latest point release, but ultimately, that they're reasonably safe. And if they had annoyances, they would be reaching out to you. I sometimes silently might move people if I know that it's not going to have some detrimental effect to what they do, what apps they typically use. I might silently move them into a Sonoma group. And just let's see what happens. And then other people once in a while will say, I tried to upgrade to Sonoma, but I couldn't. And then I just say, oh, that's because, you're currently in our Ventura group. We can easily move you out. Give us, 24 hours. Try this a day from now, and you'll be able to upgrade seamlessly. And usually I don't even hear from those people. So again, I know it's kind of like a lazy tech approach. And possibly to generate billable hours, you could say, hey, you need to be on Sonoma because Sonoma is so much better than Ventura, but we really know that it's really not, it's a little better,
It's a little better.
So, and then, so you get them to you upgrade the machines, and then you're asking for trouble because now they got a million questions.
Yeah, I see. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. And they were happily rolling along before you kind of like poked the not the badger, not the polecat, poke the bear or something like that. Thank you, Sam.
Not the badger.
or the hornet's nest is the other one, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
I mean, let these people alone, for goodness sakes. Let them live their lives if they want to. On
No,
14.4, so what,
Well, I was going to say, as long as they're fully patched, if they're so like, let them be fun, let them stay on Ventura if it's like 13.6.7 or something, as of today. But yeah, I think there's probably a philosophical difference. It's funny to me, Jared, because you're so cutting edge and like, progressive in terms of everything from political beliefs to like, the OS that you install personally. But then there's the conservative side of Jerry, which is like, let's leave well enough alone. Let's not ask for trouble. And so, I think it's an interesting bias though, because it's very fair. Like if I'm the one that says, hey, let's upgrade to Sonoma, now I'm the guy you're going to point the finger at when there's a problem or if there's a problem. And then I'm going to feel like I can't charge you if you blame me for it. So
because it was my idea. And, whereas if they come to you with it, and again, like you say, you've got to be responsible with your people. You just can't let them wither on the vine.
Yeah.
But as long as you feel like they're okay.
Yeah.
Why look for trouble?
I wish I could take that approach with the business clients, but I agree with you on the home user in a lot of ways. It's just like, as long as, to Joe's point, as long as they're patched and there's security patches for the operating systems that are supported. But if it's not going to be a big deal, leave it alone. And then I love the approach of like, I don't want to get those calls. And I hear there are some people I just don't want to hear from. And if I upgrade them, I'm going to hear from them.
Right. But the business clients, to make that argument, you can't get these people to even restart their machine for 45 days. And you send them the gentle reminders through Adigy, and they're like, they're like, I'm way too busy to restart my Mac. I couldn't possibly do that. So now you're asking them, we're not only going to restart your Mac, it may restart several times because we're going to upgrade your operating system and things are going to be great. And it's going to, when
I enjoy those. Sorry, go ahead.
No, when it hits the fan, that they're going to be calling you.
Yeah,
how do I do this now, Sam? How do I do this?
But I fully enjoy the moments. I fully enjoy the moments of those people that are always too busy to do anything when I have to do it and they're down like for a while and they're all bent out of shape. I'm like, well, listen, you had like what, 2 months.
Right.
I'm smiling ear to ear with your pain and suffering right now.
And I like how you're like, they can't even do one reboot, but now you're going to have to do 3, because it's like, that's the way OS upgrades work now. I get these calls from people. They're like, I don't know, it was showed at the bar. I pressed the button. I shut the screen. I'm like, why are you doing anything? Like, well, you see the progress bar going, like stop, don't, I have to find a new term for like, don't touch it. Stop messing with it. Like, cause that's what I want to say, but like you don't want to say to a client, it's like my refusal to put the stop thing on the network equipment or whatever, it's like, I don't want to say, don't touch your computer, but that's basically what I need them to do is just stop interfering, because that's when things do go sideways,
it's the same mentality that like, I got an email and then I realized it wasn't a legitimate email. So I unplugged the computer and unplugged the router.
Yeah. It's tricky. I don't know. I think there's a point in the release cycle where I actively warn against it, so as of now, beta, forget it, don't even think about it. 0.0, 0.1, like, yes, we're excited too, but we're not ready to recommend it yet, because there are a lot of changes and we need to give vendors a chance to make sure that their software is compatible. It's just a kind of conservative guidance on that. And then, the 0.3, and it's like, we're ready to support it, but let them kind of like ask you to your kind of attitude, Jerry. And then I think at some point, like here we are with Sonoma at 0.5, I'm, now for the last couple of versions, I guess I've been actively recommending it, or just I'll include it in my newsletter, something like, if we're supporting an upgrade to Sonoma, we'll reach out to you if or you can reach out to us. And some people do. But I do think it's perfectly valid to get billable time for like you said, Sam, the FaceTime with the computer, like being able to get on the screen after hours and just make sure everything's working well. And to just make sure that, again, to your point, Jerry, they can't find the time to restart. Let me do it at the end of the day for you. And maybe I'm more inclined to take on those kinds of projects because I'm 2 hours behind most of my clients are East Coast time, on Mountain time. So it's easy for me to do after hours stuff. But I just think that's, there is value there that you're demonstrating to them by doing it so that they just pick up right where they left off. They don't need to set aside time in the middle of their day. And we get to catch any potential issues where it's like, oh, there's some obscure software that we're not automatically updating. Let me manually update it or something like that. There's a lot of little things you can catch by doing it. So I would encourage you to pitch it as a service, and it's perfectly valid to get billable time for it. And it doesn't mean that you're on the hook if there's any issues. That's what you're there for, but it doesn't mean that it's that you can't charge for it if there's issues. That'd be my...
Yeah, I'm going to throw more friction your way, Joe, but it's these same people that don't restart the computer, that they have 5 Word documents and some PowerPoint spreadsheets and nothing is saved. And now you're in there after hours and you're going to go shutting down everything. It's like sometimes your hands are tied behind your back and you can't.
I just save it. If it's not on the desktop, if it's not saved yet, I save it on the desktop. That's it. Done.
Yeah.
I mean, the computer, you could blame a power outage. I'm not saying I would lie. I'm just saying
yes, you are.
you could there could have been a power outage overnight. And that wouldn't have been my fault. So I don't know, I'm going to err on the side of saving your documents. I'm going to assume that's the right thing. You can't always assume that. I sometimes wonder, do people open up a document and make a bunch of crazy changes just for fun, just to see how it looks, but not intending to save it? Now you've saved it,
Oh,
that's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. That actually reminds me, if I see a full document and then maybe I can't really tell if it has edits or if it's a new doc, but sometimes what I'll do in those situations is I'll always do a save as.
Yeah.
And just in case the original, I would screw it up and then someone gets pissed.
Yeah.
Or versioning can help with that, right? Hopefully.
But it just made me realize that after hours thing, those nervous heartbeats where you go to restart or do something and then the screen doesn't come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you do? Especially in Joe's case.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're going to
do.
do.
Yeah. I'm far away from most of my clients. Well, I mean, I've seen cases where I'm I don't know why it does that. Some updates, maybe Mr. Apple knows. Where's our banner? Mr. Apple, do you know what causes some of the updates to require a login, a user login after the restart, after the first restart? Or do you know what I'm talking about? You begin the upgrade to Sonoma, let's say, and it restarts. And like you said, you're kind of waiting, sometimes a restart, you're waiting for it to come back up. But in this case, it's doing an upgrade. So you expect it's going to take a little while. You check in 20 minutes later, it's still not back up, or it hasn't finished. Okay, so now it's back up, but it's at a login window. You log in and then you see a progress bar.
Oh yeah, I have seen that before.
Yeah.
Don't know why. Don't know why.
Is that because they had File Vault turned on and it did an auth restart and then now it needs... No, that wouldn't make sense.
But I don't think so in that case. Yeah, I know. I was going in my head with that too, but I don't think that's the case. And one of these days, I'm going to lose the title Mr. Apple, because every time you guys ask me something like that, I'm like, I don't know.
There must be an explanation, and I just want to throw out some buzzwords like secure token and
keep them going. Bootstrap token, get it.
Bootstrap token, thank you.
Volume ownership,
right? Volume ownership, exactly. So those something in there is the answer. I feel right, but I don't know what set of circumstances causes that. But those can be a little disconcerting after hours. Yeah,
I think if anything, volume ownership could play a role, but that would make it fail actually if it wasn't a volume owner. So
right, because it works when you it's okay, the user login is there, you log in, and now and it's I'm pretty sure, is it only with Apple Silicon, but it's not. It's not always with every Apple Silicon. There's no pattern that I've been able to see anyway. To start with. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's worth billing and getting that FaceTime on that stuff. There's one model. So there's a MacBook Air. This is another trigger for you, Sam. The MacBook Air 2018 and 2019. So the 20 are both of those dropped? Yeah, those are both being dropped from Sequoia support, but I think everything else that runs Sonoma will run Sequoia. if I'm not mistaken. That's according to this article I read in Ars Technica. And obviously these are system requirements have been released by Apple, but just to analyze it, I'm pretty sure that's the only like model that's dropped. Probably rightly so, because those should have been a major controversy for Apple. I thought, like, it seems like half of the ones that I've interacted with do that thermal throttling stuff where they just fall apart. So, yeah, good riddance to those. I mean, those are came out in 2018. You might have bought it as recently as like very early 2020 when there's like a slight revision on the 2019 model. That's pretty short. Like if you bought a Mac in the beginning of 2020 and 4.5 years later they dropped support for it, but I don't think it's unprecedented. And if you only paid $1,000 for a MacBook Air, you're probably not going to complain that much that you can't run Sonoma. So,
I don't know. I'd see a lot of people complaining for that.
Well, you can run. I mean, you can't run Sequoia. You can still run Sonoma. So that'll be supported for another 2 years ish. Something like that, or I guess.
All I'm saying is I know people can always find a way to complain.
They can. They sure can. All right. Well, beyond Sequoia, what do you guys want to talk about today?
I was kind of not on the same time or wavelength, but just in terms of pain in the butt users, I just had a conversation today with a customer where they're like main partner, I guess. He's been trying to be pushed out, I think, for a while or whatever. He wanted to turn off MFA because he's like, it never works. It's a problem, this and that. And one of the people there was just like, so I just turned it off for him because they have admin access.
Okay.
I'm just like, these are the same people. That person that just asked you to turn that off and lessen security is the same person that's going to fall for a phishing scam and allow that to happen much more easily.
Yep.
So it's just very, very aggravating to me when it's the very people that are the most likely to succumb to something like that are the ones that we reduce, or I wouldn't, but that you reduce security for.
Right.
And it's just baffling to me why you would do that. But I'm just using this as my forum to complain, basically, because it's frustrating as hell.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it from a user perspective. A lot of times they complain about the things that tech requires of them. Like we represent tech, and we're always wagging our finger and saying like you should do this or you shouldn't do that. And like sometimes they start to enforce a requirement, and then people are very wary about that, and they think, especially like a CEO type, they're gonna, or any C-level, a lot of times they're going to think that the rules don't apply to them, and maybe they don't have to, because maybe if this person falls for, an MFA thing, or a security issue, a phishing attempt or something, they're not going to really suffer for it. I mean, it's going to be annoying, but other people are going to have to deal with it, not them,
Right.
And so there's not a lot of consequences sometimes. But I don't know, maybe this is why Microsoft is now deprecating per user MFA starting in September 2025. I just saw that headline today, or not headline, but story. Will that mean that you can't do what you did for this client, essentially?
You'll have to do.
Did?
They're doing it through conditional access now, so you can still set exceptions. You just have to go to Entra to conditional access. It's funny that because I was just doing this today. I'm trying to get my chops with this because I got to do it for everybody. But you can go in there and set an exception to the rule for certain accounts if you want.
Okay. So it's just more on the, I don't know how you configured this previously or what they called it. Like per user MFA versus like a global security policy or something like that. Is that the idea that they're not like what? I mean, so my reading, I don't understand the details of it, but it just says Microsoft is deprecating per user MFA starting in September 2025. You're saying you'll still be able to set an exception on the user level, do you think, for using Entra for conditional access?
Yeah, so like in the past, the per user MFA, like you create an account 365 and then you go and like enforce MFA or enable it, and then they do their thing. But like the conditional access policy in Entra would basically just be like, you're a new user, you have MFA. Like there's no changing or turning it off unless you manually went into conditional access and went into the exclusions. So basically everyone has it unless like you manually go in there and make that change.
Right.
And I think the idea there is to do everything from the Entra portal. Like that's where all the security defaults are and all that stuff. I mean, the other thing to take into account just for the listeners is to have is to have an admin account that's like what they consider the break glass account that doesn't have MFA, just in case you get like with some crazy long password and it's just like has specific access.
Right.
And it's just the way of getting back in if MFA blows up on you or something like that.
Interesting. But you can do that through Microsoft support, right? It's not like it's like encrypted on their side. I mean, Microsoft support can basically get anybody back in if you just prove ownership of the account, essentially.
I'm assuming so.
Yeah.
But I've never had to try.
But a break glass account is a good idea to have that additional level. But I mean, this stuff is not easy to manage in my experience. It's very complex. Like because like you said, you have like if you go to the I forget if I think it's part of Entra, formerly Azure, and there's the like enabled. There's MFA enabled and then there's MFA enforced, and that's like two different pieces. And you can also separately configure like which MFA methods are supported. But then there's this other thing where if you want to support like an authentication app or text message as let's say the only form of MFA, if you separately have enabled users to reset their own passwords, then Microsoft overrides that preference and requires that Microsoft Authenticator be set up, because that's required for users to basically be able to reset their own passwords.
Yes.
So there's so many layers to it, and then like all of that is apart from the like global what they used to call global security defaults, right? And when you were doing a migration, you'd have to turn that off and like really opt into that. Like Microsoft would be like, it looks like you're trying to turn this off. You probably don't want to do that. And you're like, yes, I do. And you turn it off and you save it. And then they're like, you turn the thing off. We really don't think you should turn that off. And then they'll like turn it back on, and then you go in and you're like, I really definitely opt out of these security defaults. So you do that at that level so that then you don't need MFA when you're doing a migration, for example. But obviously you want to you want to turn that back on later, but then every user is going to be calling you. So I don't know. There's a workflow that I haven't perfected yet to manage all this stuff, and then like to get through that process of making sure that all the users that should have MFA, which is all of them, have MFA, and then keeping it managed going forward is also tricky. Like I don't know that I can rely on that dashboard that shows enforced, like to know that that's truly the status for MFA, for example.
Yeah, I agree. We got a report from Microsoft about the statuses of MFA, and it was really confusing. The report was like somewhere enforced, somewhere enabled.
Yep.
And I went in and I couldn't see a difference between them, even though.
Same.
Yeah, from what I had learned, I thought enabled meant that you turned it on, and enforced meant that they finished configuring it, and now it's permanently on, right?
You'd think,
right, that's what I thought. But
right. And we found cases like yours where it didn't make sense, like where it was not prompting them when we thought it should,
right?
And where other cases where it is prompting and we didn't think it would, and
And I think that's the whole reason that they're moving away from this, because it's BS. Like it doesn't work very well. Right. And I think conditional access is like, I don't know. It does work. I can tell you that, because I just literally a couple hours ago finished turning it on for everyone. I was doing it for like small chunks of people at the company because I wasn't sure what would happen, if we'd get a lot of phone calls. And I just did it for the whole domain. So.
Well, then there's the totally separate issue that you had come up recently that had come up for me like a couple weeks before, which was the user installed application that had permission on the tenant level or something to basically, which was the vector of attack for one of your customers and had been for one of mine. And so like we added that to the list, turn off the ability for a user to install that kind of app. I forget what the specific name of it was. But so Tim and I like months ago created a spreadsheet of all these little things. So, check, log in, make sure that SciMac has a global admin with MFA. Okay, that's one column like for a checkbox so we can review all of our tenants to do that. Yeah. Then there's a column that's like, make sure that MFA is enforced on the whole thing. Make sure everybody's enrolled in MFA. Make sure that, again, users can't install this type of app. So we just kept adding columns to this like master list of like, this is now our approach to manage, managing these things has evolved over the years. And so it's like, this is the latest generation of this, but it keeps changing while we're trying to like get a handle on it. and so we haven't gotten through this, the rows of this spreadsheet are the clients we need to go through and deal with. But we're trying to do that proactively rather than like wait for something to happen, and so
I'm so glad I'm not alone.
Yeah, it just keeps changing. Like it's just, I don't know.
I just feel like I never get that crap done on the spreadsheet because everything, like you said, keeps changing.
You should just take the lazy tech approach and just sit there. Just let it go.
What's the point?
Why bother at this point?
I like it.
Yeah, go back to Las Vegas for a little while. Why bother?
I would love to.
Get on a motorboat and go out in Long Island Sound. By the way, if you're watching the show, I'm wearing none of my family members go to Hampshire College, but if you'd like to send us, Joe, Sam, and I, your t-shirt with your company, we will be sure to display it proudly on our YouTube channel when we record the show. So I just wanted to put that out there for the adventurous advertisers out there. And think about it. You might say like, oh, well, it's just one shot, but it's not, because these YouTube videos live on into perpetuity. So you could call your children and your grandchildren and say, see, that was Daddy's company up there that guy wore his t-shirt from, see, many years ago.
That's right.
So this could be like a historical marker in the history of your company or the company that you work for or the company you founded. So, all colors of t-shirts. We don't have a preference. If you've got those pink ones sitting in a box that you can't move, we'll wear them.
Yeah.
We'll
so
wear
Jerry,
them.
who goes to Hampshire College?
It was free. We toured Hampshire College in Amherst, and they were giving out t-shirts like there was nobody's business, so,
nice.
It's clean and it doesn't smell. So I'm going to wear it,
Those are the criteria.
That's one criteria. Yeah.
You give it the smell test each morning. Still good.
That's right.
That's right. So real quick, I should have known this. Speaking of
okay, and I have a couple of helper tips too. I'm interrupting you all day long. I'm so sorry. No. I think there's a little latency on my line, but
go ahead with your tips.
No. I want to hear I should have known this, and I've got two little helper tips. So
I don't think I've mentioned this before, but stop me if I have. So I was working with a client, and they said wait. No, sorry. Yeah, I haven't mentioned this before. PostScript, ps.ps files and .eps files are not supported starting in Sonoma. Have you guys noticed that?
Oh, no. I didn't know that.
I mean, it's pretty rare. Like, I don't really know of too many people that use this file, but I forget why this came up.
What's the second extension, Joe?
So it's EPS or PS. It stands for PostScript and encapsulated PostScript.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think the reason is like PostScript was script. It's a language. It's like essentially a programming language. And so it's a way of like, I don't know, like maybe making a file be extensible in a certain way. It's used for page layout and things like that, like usually back in the day. But not so much anymore. But yeah, Sonoma just dropped support for it. You used to be able to double click them and they'd open in preview, or you could convert them. You could even like just drag them into a printer and like they would print. It's like all just native to the system, and that's no longer the case. They just completely, not only deprecated but dropped support for it. So there's a free thing called PostScript to PDF. It's a free converter. It's at mendelson.org, mendelson.org. And so that's supposed to be able to, convert these from PostScript to PDF, which again, you used to be able to do in the system. Now there's this free way to do it. So yeah, just a little tip in case anybody gets stuck out there. But Apple has an article about how they drop support for PostScript. And so,
and how did it come up for you? What was your real world?
I forget, I'm just trying to remember, like I wrote this down a while back, but a couple months ago, a client, I think, had some PostScript files, like on an old, in like a folder on an old server kind of thing. And just, how do we do this? Because like a lot of times clients don't even notice what they're opening. They just double click it and it works. But this one didn't work. So yeah,
it's weird because you can still do like when you do a print, you can do save as PostScript.
You can save as PostScript. You just can't open. That's so weird.
Well, I don't know if that so I just saved something as PostScript and I just grabbed anything and I did print, and I did for the PDF drop down, I did save as PostScript.
Can you open it and we'll make Joe a liar?
Yeah, exactly.
So it definitely saved, and then it opened in the wrong app. So I'm going to try and open it in preview, and survey says didn't open. Yeah, it opens in another app, but not in preview. Is it maybe preview disabled support for it or something?
I think just OS level support is not there, and therefore preview won't deal with it. But yeah, maybe like when you say another app, you're being very mysterious. But maybe
it's another app called Code Runner because it detected it as text and an opening Code Runner.
Wouldn't Illustrator open something like that? I would imagine it would open in EPS.
That's what I thought. That's why I asked Joe about that second extension, because that's not like an Illustrator.
Yeah, yep. I would think Adobe can deal with it, or maybe Graphic Converter or something like that. But well, what kind of tips you got, Jerry? Since I'm not a liar, as far as we know about this.
2 tips. I had somebody contact me out of the blue, and they were having problems mounting their old Drobo on their dashboard. So I thought it was really juicy, and I talked to the guy for free for about 30 minutes and then ended up kicking myself in the butt because it wasn't I thought it was a bad backplane. And I was thinking, you remember, Joe, how we had that Drobo that we kind of passed around, and you had it for a while, and then you gave it to me, and it's been sitting in the basement. So I thought, like, oh, this is great. He's got a Drobo that won't fire up. I'll take the drives. I'll move him to the new Drobo, and I'll charge him some inflated price. But as it turned out, all his drives were spinning up. It just wasn't mounting. So initially I thought it was an OS problem, and it ended up being none of those things. It just ended up being a permissions issue in settings. But it took a number of like, try this, try that. And then, a restart mounted the drive for him. Oh, wow. But in doing some of the sleuthing for him, we needed to find an older version of Drobo Dashboard. And we're all familiar with archive.org and the Wayback Machine, because sometimes I'll find a best of for running our show, CCP, using the Wayback Machine, because it'll just give me to a little snapshot in time. And I'll see a show that I'll be able to correlate with a number, and I'll say, oh, this is I remember this. This is a good one. So, but as it turns out, rather than going to some rogue website and trying to download, let's say, Drobo Dashboard 4.0, that was for an earlier version of the OS, but won't work on a newer version of the OS. Let's say you're looking for a specific vintage one, because this was a Firewire 800 Drobo that the guy had. So I was looking for Drobo 4.0. And of course, you can find a newer iteration of that. And I don't want to go too off in the weeds in this explanation. But if you go to the Wayback Machine, it'll bring you to the installer page, like an old downloads page for Drobo. Okay. It'll list all the models. And guess what? If you click on the DMG, it's there.
Wow.
Nice. It's there. It's not just like a dead link. Because that's what I thought. You go to, archive.org, you're getting page impressions, but you're not getting you're not getting all the nested files that are linked on that page. It's not. I mean, it was there, and I was able to pluck this earlier version. So if you ever are looking to find, let's say, a safe version of something, use that as a resource, because that usually can bring you to the manufacturer's page, and you might be able to just get it right from there. So I was like, I did not know that. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the final thing, and we're running a little bit long on time. The final thing is I have an older couple, and I discussed them on a Patreon show where they had a Control 4 system, and we cut off the head of the Control 4 system, and we bolted on Unify Ubiquity equipment, and it works famously now. She wanted to go to a gaming site that she plays Mahjong or Bridge online with somebody else, and she was doing it on her iPad or her iPhone, and she wanted to go to the parent site of this thing. And I don't know, it was like playbridge.com or something like that. So she goes to playbridge.com, and this website loads for her, and it's malware, and stupidly she calls a number on the screen, and then she was smart enough to hang up, and it said, you've got a virus, and all this other stuff. So I went and I checked out the URL that she was going to, and sure enough, because I am running NextDNS on my home networked Ubiquiti equipment, and NextDNS is like some of the other DNS services you could sign up for. And on a private level, it's only $2 a month. So $24, and you could do blacklisting, whitelisting of websites. You could turn on parental filters, and it also keeps people out of trouble, So I've run it in my house, and if I need to do, anything nefarious, I'll just put in my own DNS numbers on my computer, right? Nice. But the default DNS is NextDNS, and I know that most of the people in the family are using it, and they're protected. So when I put in this rogue website that she was trying to go to, it didn't load because NextDNS was active and it was blocked. And so I did a little Google searching, and I did find the right website for her, and it was something like, playbridge.us or something like that. So I emailed to her. But behind the scenes, I told her, I said, I'm gonna install something on your new system, and this is gonna, protect you from something like this happening. And to install NextDNS, you have to SSH into your Ubiquiti. It's real easy to do. And there's a wiki on it. And I've been using it now for about 2.5, maybe 3 years. And it's fantastic. And I just silently put that on for them, so she's not going to land on some bogus website. And will I add it to her stack, in terms of pricing next time she comes up for renewal, which will probably be the end of this year? Absolutely. And in the meantime, I'll just be eating the $2 a month. But it's less headaches for me. So if you have clients that are suited for that, either on a business level where you can really sort of pitch this a little bit more professionally, I think it's a little bit more for a business, but you could probably float it under the radar as a private IP address that you're using the NextDNS for, or you just want to do it for the client that fits that model that I described, where they need a better layer of protection that they're getting from their ISP. So it was a win, for a silent win for me.
Yeah, definitely include that in the show notes, Jerry. I think that's pretty interesting there. So it was just a couple bucks a month, you said, for an individual. You said it might $2 be bigger or larger for a business?
Yeah, it's a little bit more for a business. I didn't look at the pricing structure, but it's nothing outrageous. And it's not something that you'd want to be an MSP and have a portal and that sort of thing. You do these as one-offs. You would do it for the ABC company and have them have their own thing, and you manage that. And yeah, but and it's rock solid and it's fast. It's one of the top performing DNS lookups as well. NextDNS.
Nice.
That's great.
Yeah. It always makes me wonder why some of this stuff isn't just built in, whether, I don't know, I guess it would have to be a checkbox or something, why don't all networks just block these bad sites? It's like a very innocent question, do we really need all these links coming from Windows.net? I think one of the ones you shared with us, it was like a Windows.net address, which is I don't know, that must not be owned by Microsoft, because I've seen that before on client computers in the same kind of situation. Full screen, call this number. Maybe it's, they'll call me and they'll leave a voicemail. They'll be on the phone with me and they'll say, it's yelling at me. It's yelling because the screen is saying, alert, it's like, there's a sound, something's happening. Just get rid of that stuff. I mean, why don't we just have a blanket block on all of that stuff, from Apple, I guess.
That's Mr. Apple. He knows.
Yeah.
I have no answer on that whatsoever. No comment, I should say.
All right. We're revoking the Mr. Apple banner. That's your final, decline to answer. You don't get
No, I don't think, no, maybe for today, but.
Okay, for today. Nice. Well, that's a good tip, Jerry, though. It's a good, and great use case there. I mean, it would have helped that client if she had it installed ahead of time.
Yeah, so. She never would have interacted with somebody offshore who was trying to hack her. Yeah.
Nice one. Jerry for the win.
Good job. And thanks, everybody, for listening to another episode of Command Control Power. For more great content, check out commandcontrolpower.com. Click on support to join us on Patreon, and you will get access to a whole other catalog of episodes there where we open the kimono a little bit more, as Jerry says, and we talk about the behind the scenes of running our consulting practices. So if you haven't heard our Patreon episodes, check them out at commandcontrolpower.com. Click on support. Join us for a month and just let us know what you think. We hope to see you there. Thanks, everybody.